The FBI director couldn't answer a single question, not one, not under oath, not in front of the entire country. And what Ted Lieu did next changed everything about how people saw this investigation. Because one video clip, publicly available, already on record, exposed something that months of political debate had failed to surface. Not a secret, not a leak. Something that had been sitting in plain sight the entire time. And the moment Lieu played it in that hearing room, Kash Patel's composure cracked in a way no one expected. But to understand why that moment hit so hard, you need to know what Patel walked into that morning. September 17, House Judiciary Committee, Washington D.C. Kash Patel had been FBI director for months. He had survived Senate hearings. He had survived press conferences. He had sat at witness tables before and walked out unscathed. He arrived that morning looking like a man who had already decided he would survive this one too. He was wrong. Because this time, the Democrats didn't come with talking points. They came with footage. They came with documents. They came with questions that had no safe answer. The hearing was supposed to be routine oversight. But Democrats had been waiting for this moment for a long time. For months, they had been pushing the Trump administration to release the complete Epstein files. Attorney General Pam Bondi had promised in February that more documents would come. They never came. Not the full picture. Not the names. Not the financial records. Just silence, delays, and legal maneuvering. So when Patel sat down at that table, Democrats had one objective: get answers, on the record, under oath. And the first thing they did was play him a video of himself. Years earlier, before he became FBI director, Patel had publicly demanded the Epstein files be released. Loudly, repeatedly. He pointed fingers at Washington. He said the American people deserved the truth. Now he was Washington. Multiple Democratic lawmakers played that archived footage directly in front of him. Patel watched himself demand transparency. Then he had to explain why. As the man now running the FBI, he had done the opposite. His answer was the same answer he would give all day. We've released more than any previous administration. The Biden administration had the same opportunities. They did nothing. It wasn't an answer. It was a script. And everyone in that room knew the difference. Then Ted Lieu stood up. Lieu is a congressman from California, former Air Force officer, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General. He does not ask questions casually. He asks questions the way a prosecutor does, with the evidence already in hand before the first word leaves his mouth. He pulled out a clip from journalist Michael Wolff, a recorded interview. Wolff had spent time with Jeffrey Epstein. In the recording, Wolff described what Epstein had allegedly shown him from a private safe, photographs of powerful men. And according to Wolff, one of those names was Donald Trump. This wasn't a fringe claim. This wasn't a conspiracy theory circulating online. This was a journalist on record describing what he says Epstein personally showed him. And it had been publicly available for anyone to find. Lieu had found it. He pressed play in a federal hearing room in front of the FBI director, in front of every camera pointed at that table. The room went quiet. Then he looked directly at Patel and asked the question, "Are there any photos showing Donald Trump with girls of an uncertain age?" One word came back. No. Flat. Fast. No hesitation. But Lieu wasn't finished. How do you know that? And here is where something significant happened. Because Patel's answer revealed exactly what Democrats had been trying to prove for months. He didn't say, "I reviewed the files personally and found nothing." He didn't say, "My team conducted a thorough investigation and confirmed this." He said, "Because that information would have been brought to light by multiple administrations and FBI investigators over the last 20 years. Think about what that means. The FBI director just admitted he hadn't verified it himself. He was relying on the assumption that someone else would have found it by now. That is not an investigation, that is a guess." Lieu turned to the cameras and said it directly. "America, that's a huge red flag." The FBI director could not answer whether Donald Trump was on Epstein's client list. But there was still more. Something that received even less attention than it deserved. Democratic Rep. Eric Swalwell asked Patel a simple question. As FBI director, had he read all of the Epstein files? Patel said no. The head of the FBI, overseeing what Democrats called the largest sex trafficking case in FBI history, he had not read all of the files. Swalwell said what every person watching was thinking. "You're the director of the FBI. This is the largest sex trafficking case the FBI has ever been part of. The buck stops at the top. And your testimony today is that you have not reviewed all the files? Patel confirmed it, and then came the number that stopped the room cold. $1.5 billion. That is how much money four major American banks, J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of New York Mellon, Bank of America, and Deutsche Bank, had flagged in suspicious transactions connected to Epstein's sex trafficking network. Not alleged, not rumored, flagged, documented, submitted to the government. Democrats on the committee moved to subpoena those banks, to force them to hand over the records, to follow the money. Republicans blocked it, 20-19. Every Republican on the committee except one voted against getting those financial records, against the subpoena, against following $1.5 billion in flagged transactions tied to the most high-profile sex trafficking case in American history. Rep. Mary Gay Scanlon said it plainly. If you wanted to get to the bottom of this, if you actually wanted to disclose what was really involved in the Epstein files, you would be taking very different actions than you are today. Patel's response was to tell her she didn't understand how court orders worked. But it wasn't just Scanlon pressing him. Rep. Jamie Raskin had arrived with something else entirely. A letter, found inside Epstein's personal birthday book, bearing Donald Trump's name. The letter included a silhouette of a woman's body and what appeared to be a fabricated conversation between Trump and Epstein. Trump denied writing it. But here was the problem with that denial. The letter wasn't leaked. It wasn't obtained through hacking or anonymous sources. It was turned over to Congress by Epstein's own estate, which meant someone in Epstein's closest circle had kept it, filed it, and handed it over. Raskin asked Patel if the FBI would investigate Epstein's estate for producing what the president claimed was a forged document. Patel initially pushed back. Then, under pressure, he committed to an investigation. On the record, in real time, in front of every camera in that room. The hearing didn't stay polite after that. At one point, Patel looked at a Democratic congressman and said, "On the record, in a federal hearing room, I'm going to call *T on your entire career in Congress because you've been a disgrace to the American people." The FBI director, to a sitting lawmaker, under oath. But underneath the theater, something real had been established in that room. A congressman asked the head of the FBI whether the President of the United States appeared on a sex trafficking client list. The FBI director couldn't give a straight answer. A congressman asked whether the FBI had investigated $1.5 billion in suspicious transactions tied to Epstein's network. Republicans blocked the subpoena to find out. A congressman asked whether the FBI director had even read the files he was responsible for. The answer was no. And when asked directly how many times Trump's name appeared in the Epstein documents, Patel gave 3 words. "I don't know." The director of the FBI, 3 words. About the case he was supposed to be overseeing. "I don't know." After the hearing ended, Ted Lieu walked out and said what millions of people watching had already concluded. America, that's a huge red flag. He wasn't wrong. The full Epstein files remain unreleased. The complete client list has never been made public. $1.5 billion in flagged transactions sit in bank records that no one in power has been legally compelled to turn over. And the man responsible for overseeing the entire investigation testified under oath that he hasn't read all of it. Lieu didn't need a smoking gun that day. He didn't need a secret recording. He didn't need a document no one had ever seen. He just needed to ask the right question, in the right room, under oath, and let the silence answer for itself. That silence told you everything.